Hello, welcome to Knitting Nicely. I'm Danielle Chauvet, your knitting coach. Today we're going to learn how to magically put two pieces of fabric that you've knitted together using Kitchener stitch. Be sure to check out the description below to find out more about this Helen's Heart shawl that I am putting together. Okay, so I've got the two ends of my shawl finished. I've worked through the Braille section of the Helen's Heart shawl, and I've worked through the second side, the opposite side of my shawl. And I finished the lace portion here. And now I'm ready to Kitchener stitch both together. Now I have added this to a very short circular needle, so it keeps slipping off the end here. So I gotta slip these stitches back on before I can do my Kitchener. Okay, so now you can see that I've got these first three here are those stitches that we slipped on the wrong side. And so those stitches are not worked, but we're not going to worry about that when we do our Kitchener. We're going to just act like those are already worked stitches. Same thing with this side. You see these three stitches have not been worked because they are the slip stitches at the end of a row. So we're not going to worry about that yet. Actually, we're not going to worry about it at all, because when we do our Kitchener, we're just going to act like all stitches are just normal stitches. Okay, so the way you do Kitchener is hopefully you followed the directions and left a fairly long tail so that you can graft these two parts of your shawl together. So generally, I usually try to make it so that the tail is at least 3 times the length of my work. So I'll measure it off as 1, 2, 3, but then I also give myself about a yard extra just in case. It's better to have too much yarn tail than too little. So the first thing you need to do is find the end of that tail and get your tapestry needle and thread it through your tapestry needle. This, and I usually try to get it so that half of the yarn is in, so I don't have to keep pulling. Okay, so we've got our yarn threaded on our tapestry needle, and then you're going to push all your stitches to the end of your circular needle so they're ready to go. Okay, so right at the tip. Same with this one, so they're right at the tip. And the way I usually hold my work when I'm doing Kitchener is I hold the bottom portion with my thumb and my forefinger. Get this into the camera here. I hold the bottom portion with my thumb and my forefinger. And the forefinger goes between the two portions, bottom and top. And then I hold the top portion with the rest of my fingers. So it kind of keeps the needles a little bit separate. So I can kind of move my tapestry needle between the two. Okay, now when I'm doing Kitchener stitch, I try to think of how a normal stitch goes in and out, in and out, in and out when I'm doing stockinette, because that's basically what we're doing. We're mimicking a stockinette line of stitches going this way across. So if I can think about that carefully, I can know that my first Kitchener stitch needs to be going through, let's see, it's coming from this side. So it needs to be going through this first stitch from the back, because that's how a normal stitch would lie. A normal stitch is going to go up through it and down through it. So I need to pull it up through the back of that stitch. Okay. Then the top loop of that stitch would normally go through this. Okay, so I know that I need to move my tapestry needle from the front, almost like as if I'm going to knit, from the front of the stitch to the back. See that? And pull it all the way through. Now that's just the setup, okay? So now you're going to do something that you will continue to do, and you're going to repeat it all the way down the entire length of your shawl, entire width of your shawl actually. So now I think of when I'm doing the front portion, the one that's between my forefinger and thumb, I think knit, purl. So slip the stitch off my needle as if to knit, and then put my tapestry needle into the next stitch as if to purl, but don't take that stitch off. Leave that one on, and then you're going to push or pull your whole yarn through all the way. Now this is really loose, and stitches throughout here are not loose, so you need to make sure you pull that to the same tension as the rest of your stitches. And the first few stitches are a little bit wonky, so you just have to work through them as we go, and I'll show you that as we go. Now, the back portion, when that's held between my forefinger and my other fingers, I think purl off and then knit. See, I'm going through that stitch as if to knit, but I don't slip this stitch off. Keep that one on. Make sure these don't fall off. And then I pull my yarn all the way through. There we go. And these stitches are still really loose, but that's okay. I'll tighten them up. Now I'm back to the front part of my work. So between my thumb and my forefinger. Between my thumb and my forefinger, I'm always going to say knit, purl. Between my forefinger and my other fingers, I'm always going to say purl, knit. So it's knit, purl, knit. Knit, purl, knit. So let's do that. We've got a knit, slip off, purl, don't slip off. Pull it all the way through. Okay. Now, here's where I can start pulling my stitches in. You see that stitch that goes through here? That's your normal knit stitch. And that's way too loose, considering my tension from down here. So I need to try to match that tension. Now, if this is too loose too, I can kind of pull that and then pull this stitch next to it and then pull this stitch next to it to kind of tighten them all up. So they're about the same tension as the ones around them. Okay, now we're going to go to the back. So it's a purl, slip off, and knit. Don't slip off. And pull your yarn all the way through. Don't worry about getting the tension yet. I always try to do my tension when I've done the front part. So now we're going to do a knit, slip off, purl, don't slip off. And now here's where I'll fix my tension. See, that loop is really loose. So I'm going to pull it so it's about the same tension as everything else. And I'm also looking at this stitch here that I've already done to make sure that that's a good tension as well. Okay, now we're back to the back. Purl, slip off, knit, don't slip off. And when I say purl and knit, it just is telling you what direction my tapestry needle is going into the stitch. It's like a as if to purl and as if to knit. So we're at the front again. As if to knit, slip off. As if to purl, don't slip off. Pull that yarn all the way through. Now I've got to correct my tension. That one's still a little bit loose, and that one's definitely loose. So I'm going to pull it until I get the right tension. And you can see that this stitch is being tightened up as well. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I'm back to the back. As if to purl, slip off. As if to knit, don't slip off. Pull your yarn all the way through. Don't worry about the tension quite yet. As if to knit, slip off. As if to purl, don't slip off. And pull your yarn. Now I gotta fix my tension again. And you can see I'm looking at both this stitch and this stitch. This stitch looks pretty good now, so I'm not going to worry about pulling it any further. Now I'm going to go back to the back. As if to purl, slip off. As if to knit, don't slip off. And pull through. As if to knit, slip off. as if to purl, don't slip off, pull all the way through. Now sometimes this happens where my yarn will go over the top of this needle, so I need to make sure that that doesn't happen. Slip it right off, because that's the yarn I just went through this one for. So I don't need to have that on my needle anymore. And now you can see that this stitch is too loose, so I'm going to pull until that stitch is good. Okay, now you're going to keep on going until you get all the way to the other side of your shawl. It is going to take a little while, but the result is beautiful, especially if you keep careful watch of your tension. It will look like you didn't even have those two pieces of your shawl, these two pieces separate. It'll look like you just knitted it all the way through in one piece. Okay, so now I've done several stitches of Kitchener, and you can see how that looks just like as if I had knitted straight through. You can't even tell where the Kitchener stitch is. And that's the beauty of Kitchener. It mimics a stockinette, or whatever stitch you want to mimic, but on this Kitchener we are mimicking stockinette. And that's because we're moving this yarn, and then I'll show you what it looks like when the entire shawl
just as
is
if it was
all the way
knitting
together.
that entire row. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish this off all the way to this other end. Okay, so I have finished doing my Kitchener stitch all the way across, and as you can see, it almost looks like I didn't even have these two pieces separated before. Even on the back, you can see it looks like just reverse stockinette all the way through. So yes, Kitchener stitch does take some time, but the results are amazing. It's almost like magic. At the end, all I did was keep on going all the way to the end. My last two stitches, I just put the tapestry needle through just as I always do. If it's the front needle, I knit through it and slip it off. It's the back needle, I purl through it and slip it off. And then you just fasten off your yarn. The way I fasten off is I went up, down, up, down, up, down through those purl bumps, and then reversed, went back through the same purl bumps, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then I just cut it off. And as you can see, the slip stitch I cord that we have going on here continued around as I did my Kitchener. Same thing on this side. I have some ends to put in over here, but you can see that it curls around just like the rest of my shawl. I hope you enjoyed learning Kitchener stitch. Don't be afraid of it. It's a great tool.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to be notified when more videos are made, you can hit the subscribe button below. You can also check out the description below to find out where you can purchase the pattern for this Helen's Heart shawl. Happy knitting!